this week on BBC One and iPlayer.
Now on BBC One, Jane Hill with the 1 o'clock news.
Nottinghamshire becomes the latest region to enter the highest tier of coronavirus restrictions. Drinkers gather
their part in bringing this virus down.
It comes as the latest figures show 1 in 100 people had the virus last week in England. Also this lunchtime. The Labour leader defends his decision to suspend Jeremy Corbyn over anti-Semitism, saying there's no need for the party to descend into civil war. Remembering the 3 people who died in a knife attack in Nice. Thousands of soldiers and police are now protecting places of worship in France. A powerful earthquake has hit the coast of Turkey, bringing down buildings in the 3rd biggest city, Izmir. After 8 months and at a cost of billions of pounds, the furlough scheme ends tomorrow. We find out what it's done for businesses.
I don't think we would have survived without it, because I assume my only other option would have been to make everybody redundant.
And coming up on BBC News, scrum half Natasha Hunt is withdrawn from England's squad to face Italy in their Six Nations finale on Sunday after a positive coronavirus test.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the BBC News at 1. Nottinghamshire has become the latest region to move into the highest tier of coronavirus restrictions. Before the Tier 3 measures took effect at midnight, large groups of drinkers gathered in Nottingham city centre. Police have said those involved will be punished and warned that anyone caught breaking the new rules will be fined. West Yorkshire will move into Tier 3 on Monday, bringing the total number of people living in very high restrictions to just over 11 million, almost a fifth of England's population. Our correspondent Dan Johnson is in Nottingham and sent this report.
St Anne's, where so many have it tough and England's strictest rules are now in place. And 7 months into this pandemic, the outlook couldn't be much bleaker than Simon's.
People are getting lonely. People are getting rather depressed.
In his 60s, living with diabetes, only going out for shopping or the hospital.
I'm not afraid to go out, but I'm concerned.
And his wife Jean is in bed with terminal cancer.
There's lots of things we want to do. We want to go out, to travel the country, see the things that we want to be able to do, let her enjoy life. We can't. All she can do is sit in the flat.
We don't seem to have any hope at the minute. It's just all doom and gloom.
And those who look out for people here fear for them too.
The old people will feel it more because a lot of them are towards the end of life as well, aren't they? And, you know, like a lot of them have said they don't want to spend the last years of their life being confined to their flats, not seeing family.
But look what was happening in Nottingham city centre last night.
Like many people, I think I'm disappointed to see those scenes, and what we really need to do is for everybody to play their part in bringing this virus down, and that extends to everybody in our communities, whether young or old, and that's the only way that we're actually going to see some very significant reductions in the virus.
Back in St Anne's, Stonebridge City Farm is one of many surprises. It's a refuge for families, especially in the half-term holiday.
It's hard to find things to do when you're locked in the house and, you know, you've done every activity inside that you can possibly think of. We've been to every park. You know, I think months more of this and it's not going to be very nice.
Many volunteers here, like Karen, have disabilities, and first time round, the lockdown was really hard.
I was a bit fed up because I was in the house and I missed the farm that much.
So listen how much it means being back in the kitchen.
I'm learning to be independent, and coming here is really good because I'm meeting new people and staff and everyone's great.
This is runner bean.
Christmas is in question, but there are other celebrations to come first. And at the Hindu centre, they're making sure everyone gets fed during Diwali.
People are very frightened. Some of the regular devotees at the temple we haven't seen for months and months. Some of them who started to come out, that's it, they've stopped again.
And how big a deal is that during Diwali?
Well, of course it is. You know, Diwali is the most auspicious time of the year.
So, there's a month now of the toughest restrictions across the county. But then what? How will we know if it's safe for the measures to be relaxed? And if life has to carry on like this, what will that do for people in the city and here in this community?
How do you get it through to people? You know, it is a killer disease. Isolate, follow the rules. They're there for a reason.
As hospital beds keep filling up, the view gets more grim. And every day now, the alert levels rise, more communities, families, more people find life is restricted again. Dan Johnson, BBC News, St Anne's in Nottingham.
Well, another area which could soon face Tier 3 restrictions is Tees Valley in the northeast. Fiona Trott is in Middlesbrough this lunchtime. Fiona.
That's right, Jane. Discussions have been taking place between central government and the mayors and the council leaders of the 5 local authorities here. That's Middlesbrough, Stockton, Darlington, Hartlepool, Redcar and Cleveland. We understand that discussions yesterday were around what a Tier 3 would look like. There was a feeling from some council leaders that perhaps they didn't want the restrictions to go as far as what we've seen in Nottinghamshire, for example. We understand that today's discussions will be focused around the financial support that will be available from central government, and I think that council leaders here will be very will explain very clearly to central government that very high restrictions would have a severe impact on the local economy. Take Middlesbrough, for example. It has the highest rate of people claiming out of work benefit in the northeast of England, the highest rate of child poverty too, and don't forget that 1 month ago tougher restrictions were introduced here. This was before Tier 2 was introduced, and I can tell you that 1 month on, the economic impact of that is that the hospitality trade has seen a drop in business of around 70%. Council leaders too are also very concerned here about people's mental health. As I've said, long-term unemployment an issue here, and long-term underlying health issues which make them vulnerable to catching coronavirus. Tier 3 is not what they want here. Council leaders understand it's necessary though, and those discussions are continuing.
All right, Fiona, thank you, Fiona Trott. Well, about 1 in 100 people had coronavirus in England last week, according to new figures from the Office for National Statistics. The trend across the UK is similar, with a slightly worse picture in Northern Ireland and a slightly better one in Wales and Scotland. The rise in infections is likely to put the government under pressure to introduce further measures. Here's our health correspondent, Catherine da Costa.
The Royal Liverpool Hospital's among those which have had to cancel some routine treatments to cope with the number of COVID patients becoming seriously ill. There is a glimmer of hope. New daily infections in the city have fallen slightly, though they're still at a high level. As West Yorkshire prepares to enter England's highest level of alert from Monday, local leaders are keen to know how long they'll have to stay there.
We're watching, obviously, Liverpool City region with a very keen interest. They've been in the longest, just over 2 weeks, which means that their review will be coming up within the next week, 10 days or so. I'm not clear whether they'll be in a position to come out and what that will actually mean. This is an area that everyone is really very concerned about.
It's now estimated 1 in 100 people in private homes in England had COVID in the week to last Friday, with around 52,000 new infections every day, up about a half on last week's figure. In Northern Ireland, the Office for National Statistics estimates 1 in 80 had the virus. It was 1 in 120 in Wales and 1 in 140 in Scotland. Cases are still highest in the north and are growing across England, but today's figures support the trend that they've levelled off in the northeast. Yet Labour's continuing to put pressure on the government to go further.
My concern is that the tier system is not strong enough to stop the infection rate going up, and the alternative now is weeks or months of agony, frankly, in the tier system. So I do call on the Prime Minister to look again. If we've learnt one thing from phase 1, wave 1 of the virus. It's that you need to act quickly and decisively.
But ministers want to stick with a targeted approach.
Even at the very high level, schools have been kept open, businesses have been kept open. We leave in reserve the option of taking further measures, but actually what we really need now, and what I think the domestic but also the international experience shows, is when you've got this focused approach, we really need full compliance, full cooperation.
The epidemic is still growing. While there's hope restrictions in some areas may be starting to slow the rise in infections, experts say the next 4 months will be tough. Catherine Da Costa, BBC News.
The leader of the Unite trade union, Len McCluskey, has described the decision to suspend the former leader Jeremy Corbyn from the Labour Party as wrong and unjust. But he has appealed to his members to stay in the party. This morning, Sir Keir Starmer has again been defending the decision. Here's our political correspondent, Leila Nathu.
Out in the cold, for now unwelcome in the party he led just 7 months ago. Jeremy Corbyn's response to a report into how anti-Semitism was handled while he was in charge of Labour saw him dramatically suspended. But his allies say the move threatens party unity and have called for him to be reinstated.
I think it was unjust, and hopefully with discussions that can take place we can resolve it and we can all move on. My message really to literally hundreds of thousands of our members who are already expressing their anger is to stay in the party.
Shame on you! Shame on you! Yesterday's report by the Equalities Regulator found Labour had broken the law in relation to how it dealt with anti-Semitism and said there'd been a failure of leadership on the issue. It was this statement by Jeremy Corbyn that anti-Semitism had been dramatically overstated by his opponents that led to his membership being temporarily revoked. His successor says there'll be an independent investigation, but insisted there was no need to revisit old quarrels.
It's not for me to say what process should be followed. That's for the General Secretary, or what sanction is in order. I don't want a civil war in the Labour Party. I don't think there's any need for one. I want to unite the party, but I'm not going to renege on my commitment to root out anti-Semitism.
Jeremy Corbyn's suspension allows Keir Starmer to show that Labour is serious about zero tolerance towards anti-Semitism and that he's determined to make a clean break from the past. He's already showed his willingness to take on the Labour left, its figurehead and former leader now no exception, but the full consequences of the decision won't become clear for some time. The party's investigation into Jeremy Corbyn's comments will run its course. There is the possibility he could be expelled. That would be an explosive outcome. But for now, though, Labour wants to avoid returning to the days of factional fighting. Leila Nathu, BBC News, Westminster.
Thousands of soldiers and police are being deployed in France to protect places of worship and schools following yesterday's knife attack in Nice. 3 people were killed at the Notre Dame Basilica. The 21-year-old suspect, who'd only recently entered the country, is in hospital in a critical condition after he was shot by police. Hugh Schofield reports from Paris.
At the Basilica of Notre Dame, the people of Nice have been coming to pay homage to the victims, to contemplate and maybe to grieve a little.
The hate, so much hate. Please stop killing us. I can't take it anymore. Excuse me, I can't take this anymore. I have to go to work. Sorry.
Three people were brutally knifed to death after the attacker entered the church early yesterday morning. Police, who were quickly on the scene, shot and overpowered him, and he's now in hospital. Among the victims was a Brazilian woman in her 40s. She struggled to a nearby cafe where, before dying, she said, "Please tell my children I love them." The attacker is a 21-year-old Tunisian man, Brahim Awissawi, who only came to France the day before. A month earlier, he'd arrived from North Africa on the Italian island of Lampedusa and been given Red Cross papers. In the Tunisian city of Sfax, his mother and brother said he was an observant Muslim and went to Europe to work.
He has been praying for about 2.5 years now. He went to work and came home. He did not go out and socialise. He just used to bring coffee from work and drink it at home.
When we talked that night, he said he'd just arrived in the area and it's getting very late here. He went into the city by train at 6:30 the next morning, just hours before the attack.
In France, the language has toughened. The Interior Minister, Gérald Darmanin, said the country was now at war. Not with a religion, he said, but with Islamist ideology. The mayor of Nice said France could not expect to win this war with the laws of peacetime. But in parts of the Islamic world, it's France that's seen as the aggressor. Governments, including Turkey's, have condemned the attack. But there have been more demonstrations, like here in Bangladesh, against President Macron's defense of cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad and his crackdown on what he calls Islamist separatism. It's an anti-French climate that's extended to clear and explicit threats against France on jihadist websites and blogs. Yesterday in Nice, those threats became real. Hugh Schofield, BBC News, Paris.
A major earthquake has hit the Aegean, with buildings damaged in the Turkish resort city of Izmir, home to about 3 million people. The quake was felt from Athens to Istanbul, from where Orla Guerin joins me now. Reports still coming through. Orla, how much do we know?
Well, certainly it was a powerful quake, strong enough for me to feel it here in Istanbul. There was a very distinct sense of the ground shifting beneath my feet. Now, the US Geological Survey has put the strength at 7.0 magnitude. Local earthquake monitoring services are saying it was 6.6. Either way, sadly, it has been strong enough to bring down several buildings in the city of Izmir. Local officials are saying that about 20 buildings have collapsed. We don't yet know what kind of buildings they were, but there has been video appearing, very distressing video on social media, which is so far unverified. But in one case, it shows what appears to be a multi-story apartment building coming down, people running away in fear, running into the streets, screaming in terror. We do know that a search is ongoing now in several of those buildings for survivors. We also know there has been a sea level rise. There is video again on social media showing flooding in parts of Izmir, and there are reports coming in of fishermen who may be missing at sea. Now, this is a risk that people in Turkey live with every day. It's one of the most seismically active countries. It sits on several active fault lines. But people here will remember that back in 1999, another powerful quake in Izmir killed 17,000 people. So a lot of concern today, no indication yet that there will be casualties on that scale, but certainly there are concerns about loss of life.
Orla, thank you. Orla Guerin. It is 18 minutes past 1, our top story this lunchtime. As Nottinghamshire becomes the latest region to enter the highest tier of coronavirus restrictions, drinkers gathered in the city centre before the measures came into force. Still to come on the programme, in the run-up to the Women's FA Cup final this weekend, we speak to the player who's helped both teams get to Wembley.
Coming up on BBC News, England netballers stay positive despite losing their series against the world champions New Zealand, with defeat in the second match of their 3-test series in Hamilton.
Across Europe, stricter measures are coming into force to deal with the second wave of coronavirus. In Paris, there were huge traffic jams as people tried to leave the city before the latest lockdown began. And politicians in some other countries are calling for even tighter restrictions, including in one of the worst hit, Belgium, from where our Europe correspondent Gavin Lee reports.
The exodus from Paris last night. Those who could afford to leaving to spend the second lockdown elsewhere. In the city, small groups of protesters gathered, angry at the stay-at-home ruling and some prepared to disobey the measures.
We don't want to be locked down. We're sick of the curfew and everything. We understand that it's for the disease, but we shouldn't get carried away. From midnight to night, we all have to stay at home. It's too much. I'm not going to. I'm going to stay here.
For the next month, across France, only essential businesses will be open and people will have to fill out forms to leave home for basic needs. Here in Belgium, a second lockdown is also expected to be announced in the coming hours.
In just a few hours, the high streets of Brussels and elsewhere across the country are due to close. The government is meeting now to decide on the severity of the new lockdown. For the size of its population, Belgium has the worst infection rate in Europe. A quarter of people being tested are positive for COVID-19, and there are more people in hospital now than at any point during the first wave.
In Germany, Europe's biggest economy has been the best equipped to cope during the pandemic with a much larger healthcare system. But now a partial lockdown will begin there on Monday. Bars, restaurants, sports centres closing. The Chancellor, Angela Merkel, saying it was the only way to prevent a health emergency.
Und in diesem Sinne wünsche ich mir für die kommende Zeit vor allem eines, dass wir alle.
For the coming times, I wish for one thing, that we all show solidarity and empathy to one another and with one another. This is the only way we will get through this historical crisis. This winter will be hard. It will be 4 long, difficult months, but it will end.
It's now come to light that a new strain of the virus, first linked to farm workers in Spain, accounts for the majority of new cases around Europe. Scientists tracking the pathogen suggest people returning from summer holidays in Spain played a key role in its spread.
It then seems that the virus was able to move into the local population and spread around Spain as people were eager to visit friends and family after the long lockdown. When travel then picked up over the summer, the variant was able to jump into other countries.
Leaders across the EU met online last night to work out how to handle the second wave. The EU Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, urged Europeans not to travel around the continent, a far cry from the summer when travel was encouraged to help the struggling tourism sector.
After the decrease of the first wave during summer, we obviously have relaxed some measures too rapidly.
For the next month, large parts of Europe will be in hibernation state. If people can stick to it and the COVID rate falls, the hope is to allow small gatherings again by Christmas. Gavin Lee, BBC News, Brussels.
The Scottish Government has released new guidance about the wearing of masks in schools. The changes will affect senior secondary school pupils aged between 15 and 18. From Monday, pupils in areas under Tier 3 or 4 restrictions should wear a face covering in class. Adults in all primary and secondary schools are being told to wear a face covering when it's not possible to maintain distancing. After 8 months in operation, furlough, known as the Job Retention Scheme, comes to an end tomorrow. At the height of the coronavirus lockdown, nearly a third of the UK workforce was having part of their wages paid by the government. One area which was reliant on the scheme was Crawley in Sussex, home to many people who work at Gatwick Airport. Our business correspondent Emma Simpson has been to the town to find out what impact the scheme has had.
Gatwick Airport dominates the landscape and the local economy depends on it. So when the plane stopped flying, the impact was dramatic.
Horrendous, scary. We suddenly became just very unsure of our future.
At this hotel, bookings collapsed, weddings postponed.
I think we've got a plane just going over, and we now get quite excited when we hear a plane.
The owners kept things going. The furlough scheme saved them.
I don't think we would have survived without it, because I assume my only other option would have been to make everybody redundant.
Some workers he had to let go, and he still has 5 on furlough.
Now that the new employment support scheme has been revised and improved, we're hoping that we can keep them going. It's our intention, simply because we're going to be very busy next year as well. So we don't want to have to make any further redundancies.
Down the road in Crawley, more than 40% of the workforce was on furlough in August.
This town was doing pretty nicely before the pandemic. Unemployment was low, but there are now more than 3 times as many people claiming benefits compared to this time last year. The furlough scheme couldn't save every job.
Chris worked as a security manager at Gatwick Airport and was furloughed before being made redundant.
Started there when I was 18, so almost all of my sort of adult life has been at the airport working, so it was tough.
But Chris used his time off to grow his new business, a comic shop with his former colleague. They've now taken on 2 other ex-airport staff.
We will come back from it.
I think the town's strong enough to survive until things get back to normal.
This beauty clinic used to get lots of cabin crew and holidaymakers through its doors. As a limited company director, Melissa had to survive off her savings instead of furlough. She's found new clients now. There's just one problem.
I'm really worried about another lockdown because we were the last to come back last time. So because we're close contact and everything that we're doing is so close to the face, you know, it did take so long for us to come back. I just, pray there's not another lockdown.
An airport town trying to weather the storm and hoping for brighter days ahead. Emma Simpson, BBC News, Crawley.
The US election campaign is entering its final weekend. Though more than 80 million Americans have already cast their vote, Donald Trump and Joe Biden are still travelling to key states like Florida that could swing the result in their favour. Peter Bowes sent us the latest from the campaign trail.
Back in his home state again, and another push for votes in Florida. Donald Trump narrowly won here in 2016, but the Democrats have gained ground, and the race with Joe Biden is neck and neck.
We are going to win 4 more years in the White House. And we're going on to win a record share of the Hispanic American vote. You see what's happening?
The president attracts large crowds, but with little social distancing and few masks. Donald Trump is confident he can defy the opinion polls by focusing on the economy rather than the coronavirus.
This is historic prosperity. Another major tax cut to go along with the biggest tax cut in the history of our country. And record job growth. And Joe Biden's plan is to deliver punishing lockdowns. He's going to lock you down.
For Joe Biden, there's no issue more important than taking control of the virus. He's also been campaigning in Florida, but with smaller drive-in audiences and a tone that mocks the president's approach to COVID-19.
Donald Trump has waved the white flag, abandoned our families, and surrendered to this virus. But the American people never give up. We never give in, and we surely don't cower, and neither will I. Donald Trump just had a super spreader event here again. They're spending more than just coronavirus. He's spreading division and discord.
In this divided nation, the coronavirus pandemic is not only polarising, but getting much worse. The country has just recorded its highest number of new cases in a single day since the outbreak began, and tensions are running high. With many people nervous about the outcome of the election and the possibility of civil unrest, the retail giant Walmart has decided to take guns off its store shelves, although they'll still be available to buy. A spokesman said, "We've moved our firearms and ammunition off the sales floor as a precaution for the safety of our associates and customers." The final 4 days of the campaign will see Donald Trump and Joe Biden making repeat visits to the handful of states that will decide the election. Peter Bowes, BBC News, Los Angeles.
The Women's FA Cup final takes place on Sunday when Everton play holders Manchester City behind closed doors at Wembley. It's an unusual game for City's Chloe Kelly because she's actually helped both teams reach the final. Alex Howell has been to meet her.
I can't wait to get going now. Yeah, I'm absolutely buzzing. What a day to be at Wembley in the FA Cup final.
Chloe Kelly is in the weird position of having helped both teams get to the final on Sunday. Usually, you can only play for one team per season in the FA Cup. But because of COVID and lockdown, it means the final is being played late.
Yeah, it is really strange playing for Everton in the first 2 games and then the last 3 at Man City is great, but it is a great feeling, but I'm here to do my job at Man City now.
She made a summer move to Man City after playing for Everton last season, helping them through the earlier rounds of the Cup.
I think this year is going to throw up quite a few very interesting trivia questions in the future. yeah, it's just where we are just now, isn't it? We're grateful to have the chance to finish the competition and hopefully go on and win it.
I'm absolutely buzzing. It's Everton, to be fair, because I think they deserve it. I've got a lot of friends still in the squad. I haven't spoken to them too much this week. They probably don't want to talk to me too much, but yeah, I've got great relationships with still the Everton girls and the manager and all the staff too. I've got huge respect for them, and yeah, I appreciate everything that club did for me, but I'm here at Man City now and I want to get the job done with this club.
She won't be holding back because she knows the opposition. She admits she's a bad loser, and although she's been told she'll get a winner's medal whatever the outcome, she'd definitely rather do it by winning.
Hopefully I'll be having a Man City winners medal, and that's all I'm focused on, yeah.
Alex Howell, BBC News.
And let's take a look at the weekend weather prospects. Here's Stav Danails.
Thanks very much, Jane. Good afternoon to you. Not a bad end to the week for many of us. Probably the best of the weather today, though, across Scotland, Northern Ireland, where we've got sunny skies, just a few blustery showers around. Further south, for the majority of England and Wales, though, it is rather cloudy, rather grey, with some spots of light rain and drizzle, but very mild indeed. Now, as we head on into the weekend, things are set to turn very unsettled. A series of deep areas of low pressure will move in to bring widespread gales, some heavy rain, which could lead to some disruption. More on that in just a moment. Let's go back to this afternoon. You can see where the lion's share of the sunshine is across northern areas. Just a few blustery showers for the north and the west of Scotland, but thicker cloud across the south. And here we will see some spells of light and patchy rain. But it'll be very mild for all areas, but particularly for England and Wales, 15 to 17 degrees. Now, things start to change as we head through this evening and overnight. The first of these deep areas of low pressure will start to show its hand, pushing rain, cloud and strengthening winds across northern and western areas. Some of that rain could be quite heavy and persistent in places. It'll also feed in some very mild air by the end of the night for southern areas. The mid-teens Celsius here, chillier though for the north of Scotland. So into Saturday, this deep area of low pressure has been named Storm Aidan by the Irish Met Service because it's going to bring some disruptive winds to the Republic of Ireland, a real squeeze in the isobars there. But they're likely to see some of these strong winds extend out into the Irish Sea, so that's going to bring some disruption to western parts of Britain as well through the day. It's also going to push a band of very heavy squally rain eastwards, where the winds really will be quite strong on it. Behind it, the skies brighten up into the afternoon, but it stays wet for the northwest of the country. And look at the wind speeds, 40-50 miles an hour widely, up to 70 miles an hour around Irish Sea coast. So these are pretty disruptive winds. Despite all that, it's still going to be fairly mild, those temperatures around the mid-teens for most of us. Might not feel like it because of the wind. Now, Storm Aidan pushes northwards. Another feature runs in from the southwest to bring more wet and windy weather for part two of the weekend. So it's going to be a windy start. Heavy rain through the morning will tend to clear away, followed by blustery showers. Some of these will merge together to produce longer spells of rain across some western areas. Probably the better chance of staying dry will be further east, but even a few showers will appear as well. Another mild day in the southeast, but turning cooler for the north and the west. So we've got a number of yellow warnings in force at the moment, yellow warnings, that is, for heavy rain and strong winds this weekend. Likely to see some disruption for that, so stay tuned to the forecast. But then look at this, high pressure begins to build in for next week. That'll settle things down nicely, bring us some sunnier weather in places, lighter winds too, but it is going to turn chillier both by day and by night. Jane.
Stav, thank you. Stav Danails. And just a reminder of our top story here. As Nottinghamshire becomes the latest region to enter the highest tier of coronavirus restrictions, drinkers gathered in the city centre before the measures came into force. That is all from the News at 1 team. Goodbye from all of us here. Now we'll join our news teams wherever you are. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.